What do fussy babies and ADHD kids have in common? You see, many times we hear from parents that their pediatrician shares, don't worry, it's just colic, they'll outgrow it. But what they don't tell you is that, yes, the colic might go away, but oftentimes they grow into other challenges. So those endless nights of crying, the back arching, the sleeplessness, there aren't just phases that magically disappear. They're actually warning signs that something deeper is happening in your child's nervous system. So on one hand is colic. On the other hand, what we see every week in our office is parents come in with, say, a 7-year old. They're struggling with a sensory issue, ADHD or anxiety. And when we dig into their history, when we look back, there it is. They're often colicky babies. The stress that caused colic at 3 months old is now causing meltdowns at 7 years old. The labels have changed, but the problem never really left. So, in this video, I want to dive in for you if you are a parent and you are exhausted right now from those sleepless nights. You've eliminated dairy, you've got the diligent food journal, you've tried every colic drop on the market, and yet you're still watching your poor baby suffer. In this video, I want to share what might be the most important piece of the puzzle for you. So, in the next few minutes, we'll dive into why birth interventions are actually incredibly common in many colic cases. We'll share how the vagus nerve is critical not just for digestion, but for overall development, why babies arch their backs, and hint, it doesn't have to do with gas, and the exact progression from colic to some of these chronic childhood challenges that we see. Finally, as we do in our office every single day, every single week, we want to share how you can actually help your baby heal at the source. So, I want to share a quick story. Take little Graham, for example. He was 8 weeks old when mom brought him in, and she said that 80% of the time he was awake, he was crying, he was fussy, he was inconsolable, and mom couldn't put him down. So, not only was she sad for him, but she said she couldn't really enjoy being a parent. She would roll her eyes when people would say, "Oh, enjoy it now. It's going to go so quick." Fast forward a few weeks with our care, Graham's happier, mom's happier, and it turned out she didn't need a special formula. She didn't need a new magic burping technique or the magic colic drops. It was actually that Graham's nervous system was stuck in fight or flight. I'll bring up a picture here of him. And so, as a result, his colic wasn't just a digestive issue, it was a nervous system that was stuck in fight or flight. And the nervous system is the grand central station, it controls everything from digestion to sleep to growth and development. So, in this video, I want to dive into if you are doing food sensitivity testing, if you are trying different diets, why, yes, that might be part of the problem, but it's often just part of the problem. So if that is all you're going through, you might have an incomplete picture and you might notice your kiddo is continuing to struggle. So, first of all, let's dive into the vagus nerve. Why is this nerve so important? So, the vagus nerve is one of the things that we work with in our office every single day because when there is a digestive issue, the vagus nerve is one of the most critical pieces. So, the vagus nerve comes from the upper neck, from the brainstem, and it goes all the way through the digestive tract. It helps the esophagus move food down. It helps the stomach close and seal. So if that upper part is off, you might notice your baby has a lot of reflux. It helps stimulate the stomach to break food up, and then the small intestine, the large intestine to absorb it and poop it out. So all those different layers of digestion need to be firing properly. If the first layer is off, you might notice reflux. If the middle layer is off, you might notice a lot of gas and discomfort, a lot of like arching and maybe movement. And then if the third layer is off, your baby's constipated, doesn't get the food out. All of that is controlled by the vagus nerve. So here's what we see is when there is birth trauma, and I do want to say that this might be perfectly needed to get baby out safely. Let's say there is a emergency C-section that's needed to save mom's life or save baby's life. That's great. But if baby is stuck in the birth canal and maybe then they need forceps or suction or C-section, as I mentioned, all these things put an incredible amount of stress on the upper neck because that is often, in this case of a C-section, where baby is pulled and twisted and turned to come out. In Graham's case, mom said the cord was wrapped around his neck a few times and his heart was starting to decelerate with each contraction. So, of course, they had to get him out quickly and safely. However, that event put a lot of stress on his neck, and this was one of the most critical things that we found for him that was out of alignment, and it was stressing his nervous system. So not only was it stressing his nervous system as a whole, but it was in the area that controls the vagus nerve. So that's where, whenever we work with a family, step one is we're diving into the history. How was labor and delivery? Because that is often the thing that we see at the root of where this stress can start to come from. Next up, then, is, as I mentioned, there can be stress here from birth. But now, why are babies arching their backs? Why are they stiffening their necks? We had a little girl in earlier this year who, when mom was holding her, she was stiff as a board, is what I shared with my son when I got home that day. But she, at a few months old, wouldn't even relax and melt into mom. And you see this stiffness, this rigidity, this trying to work something off, again, typically goes back to that birth process because they feel something is stuck in their body. They feel something is off, and they're trying their best to try to arch and move and release it. When we're adjusting infants and babies, we're often watching how their body moves, and we see that when we get the right adjustment, suddenly they open up and they stretch and they release that stuck tension. So now, as I mentioned in the beginning, we talked about colic, but how does that then fast forward to ADHD? And I want to share that this doesn't happen all the time. It's not like, oh no, my baby's colicky, that means they're going to get ADHD. It's going to lead to an anxiety diagnosis or a sensory processing issue. That's not the case here. But what the emphasis is that colic is this sign of stress stuck in their body. And so if we see a nervous system that does stay stuck in stress, where does that stress go? So you might have, at those first few months of life, maybe 0 to 6 months, you've got that colicky baby. But if stress stays stuck on, especially if their neck stays out of alignment, what we see then is now things don't drain the way they should. So maybe 6 to 18 months, you start to get the baby with chronic ear infections. Swollen tonsils, adenoids might show up later in life because this stress is now impacting their immune system. You start to get some rounds of antibiotics, steroids, nebulizers, all these things can stress the nervous system even more. Now the baby's getting a little bit older. They're a toddler now. They're getting to be that preschooler, and they're cute and they're walking and they're moving around and they're starting to share words. But if it's not coming fluidly, again, it might be this stress lowering their ability to get to this higher center of their brain for speech. If you're interested, I have a video as well on the hierarchy of neurological development and how, if the foundation isn't laid properly, higher brain things start to be affected. If there's stress constantly going through their nervous system, now sensory issues start to develop. Lights, sounds, touch, all these things are going to stress the nervous system even more if it's in stress to begin with. There's actually many studies that show how well the vagus nerve is working directly correlates to how well a child is, their sensory processing system is working. So vagus nerve stress can more easily lead to sensory processing stress. And now we get to the very bottom, ADHD anxiety. Well, guess what? Vagus nerve is very critical on these as well, because I know I talked about vagus nerve affects digestion, but vagus nerve is also the critical brake pedal that slows our nervous system down. It brings us out of stress. That's one of the reasons when this area is off, is not only is it feeding stress into the brain, but it's compromising the vagus nerve. So you might see it as digestive issues early in life. You might see it a little bit later as immune issues, communication issues. But now the vagus nerve doesn't have its ability to hit the brakes in the nervous system and calm us down when we are feeling anxious or stressed. It doesn't have the ability to hit the brakes and let us sit still, let us focus. It also gives our brain that ability to feel organized and grounded so it can pay attention instead of a wandering mind. So that's how all these things can link together. So if you find your kiddo is struggling with any of this category of things that I mentioned, I would encourage you to reach out to the pediatric chiropractor in your community and ask them to check, how is my child's vagus nerve working? How is my child's nervous system doing as a whole? Is there stress stuck in their body? Is their vagus nerve off? Is that what could be preventing all these things from really clicking into place? And if so, that's where neurological chiropractic comes in. That's what we love helping kiddos with. Just like in Graham's case, not only did we help his nervous system calm down, but we allowed mom to really enjoy being a new parent as well, and took a lot of stress off of her nervous system too. So if you have any questions, any comments, reach out and know we're here for you.